the question then arises is, in order for you to be able to teach, you have to be, theoretically, you have to be a Levite, you have to be a priest, you have to be from the lineage of Aaron, from the lineage of you have to be from the lineage of Levi. From Aaron would be the ministry of the high priest. So the question I ask is, how is it that Jesus becomes a teacher? How is it that he can teach if he's from the lineage of David or from Yehuda, from Judah? And this is important because how does he get the authority to go and preach at the synagogues? How does he get the authority to go and teach these at the temple, and is allowed to do so by the scribes and the Pharisees? Okay, so I want to answer that, and the answer is real. He says, and Jesus was going about in all of Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, the good news about the kingdom that was at hand, that was about to come. So he's teaching in the synagogues. Where does he get this authority from? How is it he's allowed? And then Matthew again repeats it, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom. John is going to basically say the same thing as Luke. Luke is saying he began teaching in their synagogues. Okay, and it was his custom. He entered into the synagogues on the Sabbath and stood up to preach. This is the same phrase that he used in the Apostle Paul, and some of us totally ignore this. No, he was going in there in order to debate it, but Jesus is not debating. Jesus is teaching them. As was his custom. He doesn't have a problem with it. He's Jewish. He's following the law of Moses. He's not a Baptist or a Pentecostal going into a Jewish synagogue. He's one of them. This is what he would do. This is where it's done. So when Paul goes through the 3 missionary journeys, teaching in the synagogues, don't make him out to be that he's in there just debating or arguing with them. And because I want to go through all of that to show you that a lot of people believed, a lot of people followed him. It wasn't all debate and argument. He was there for 3 months. He was there for 3 Sabbaths. He's there for 2 years, teaching them. But we get one instance where he's kicked out, and now he's in the highways and the byways. I want to also go through if we say he taught in the houses, I want to see where that's at. I didn't find them. So we stayed at some of the houses, but I don't see where he taught in any houses, because this is not what they would do. I'm not saying that they wouldn't have discussions in the homes with the people that are there, but the jailer and Lydia, of which we say he went into their houses and he talked to them and they believed, that's a different scenario. He's teaching in the synagogues. He's not starting churches all over. This is one of the misconceptions that we have in the book of Acts, and I can show it to you and I can prove it to you. This sect of the way started way before the cross, when they're following Jesus, So we'll get to that. It says, and Jesus answered him, I have spoken openly in the world. I have always taught in the synagogues and in the temple. So this is a custom that they did. This is what they would be doing outside in the temple, Jerusalem, outside of the temple in Caesarea, in Nazareth, in any of the other cities. It would be in the synagogues. But it even goes beyond that. This is when the high priest Caiaphas is talking to him when he's being taken captive overnight, and they're prosecuting him. They're asking him questions. So he says, I always taught in the synagogues and in the temple. So again, this isn't something new that Paul automatically started. This is what they would be doing. Okay, so then again, so who would make him a teacher? I can answer it this way. As soon as he starts speaking and some of the people approach him, so he goes to 5,000 men, not including the women and the men. He can't do this in the synagogue, so he does it out by a hill, and then he feeds them. So they see the miracles, and then he's also teaching. He speaks as one that with authority. 10,000, 15,000 are here. So that group, when the feasts come up in the temple, that group is already looking for him to show up at the temple in order to teach. And you'll see that when he feeds the 4,000 again, so he already has a following. Beyond that, the resurrection of Lazarus, a couple of weeks before the last Passover, where he is the Passover on the cross, there is a miracle, and then you wonder, he waits and he waits until Lazarus is pronounced dead. And then he's in the tomb for 3 to 4 days. And then he goes and he raises him up. Now, if you keep on reading, there's a verse that are very interesting. Okay, so now when they're coming to Passover, he says, the great multitude therefore of the Jews learned that he was there, and they came, but not only for him, but they also came to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So this last Passover brought many people to hear about this miracle and see Lazarus, and so to where the Pharisees and the elders were threatened by this, so the miracles that Jesus did, he did them in order to create a following, so that when he shows up at the temple and he's teaching, they're asking for him to teach, and the Pharisees can say nothing about it, and the Sadducees cannot say anything about it. As a matter of fact, they're always taunting him, trying to make him look foolish, and it turns out that he makes them look foolish. So the followers, the people that are there, make him a rabbi, make him a teacher. They want to hear what he says, because he speaks as one, that doesn't speak is like the rest of the scribes. So he says that, but when there was now in the middle of the week, the Feast of Tabernacles, Jesus went up to the temple and began to teach. And then they were saying, how has this man become learned, having never been educated? And he says, the teaching is not mine, but the one that has sent me. Meaning, you've already heard this teaching, is kind of what he's telling them. But he's rephrasing it, but it isn't unique to me. Okay, and then the result was that when Jesus finished these words, the multitudes were amazed at his teaching them as having one with having authority. So it was in his teaching that this group is following him into the temple. He takes them into Solomon's portico, and we have a teaching on the temple that will show you where they gathered. And then so this sect of the way, the ones that are following this Jesus, he hasn't died yet, but after the cross, they're still going to gather together there at the temple. It's already started. It was already in play.